Haha, welcome to the Ruminator and Bullshit Artist podcast. We are sponsored by Abdulaziz, the 42nd Prince of Saudi Arabia. Welcome, Oscar, my friend. How are you today?
I have no I have no consent to the imagery that my co-host was just trying to convey of the Saudi prince. I want to give my undying respect to the Saudi prince. He is my lord. He is my liege. Um, and I honestly think your impersonation of him just now was quite offensive, actually.
Oscar, that's a
So fuck you,
disgusting assumption, alright?
fuck you.
You think I was
Yeah.
making an impression of him? I was just doing my own voice. I wasn't
No,
making
no,
an
no.
impression of him.
Don't try and worm your way out of it.
No,
Don't try and like wriggle your way
I
like
said we are
into
sponsored by
safety.
Abdulaziz. Why would I say that as if in third person if I was impersonating him? Yeah.
Well, it's clear that you were trying to,
No, 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 no. I wasn't trying to do shit.
look,
I was
look,
just,
all I'm,
I was just
well, the thing
being.
is, I'll compliment you. It was quite accurate, and that was part of the reason why I thought you were doing that.
Well,
You
'cause
know,
they all sound the same, the princes.
wow, wow, what in Prince Charles?
Yeah, yeah.
Just yeah, Prince Philip.
No, he's dead.
Well, yes, but so are like loads of things that are still alive.
Well, like country music, that's pretty dead.
What are you talking about? Dolly Parton's still,
I mean, there's some
giving
good
rim
stuff out
jobs
there.
to.
What's that
Yeah,
guy that you like, Coulter Wall?
yeah, yeah, they're pretty good.
Yeah,
Imaginary Appalachia, I think it's called.
that's the album.
Or
Yeah.
is, or is
There's
that the
also
other?
the what's I think it's the Dead South. They're pretty good.
There's a lot of really good country bands, and country music's pretty timeless as well.
Yeah.
Like
Well, it's 'cause that part of America is timeless. It hasn't changed since the 30s. like since,
since the 1800s. Yeah.
yeah, since the Great Depression, it's just been, yeah.
Yeah, no, pretty much. It has a very sort of continuous identity.
Yeah.
It feels
I
like.
mean, it is amazing, really, when you think about like the rate of change in different parts of the world, because it does vary,
Mm.
and sort of there's these hubs of like where shit is happening, hubs of activity, and then there's you get further away from civilization and also further away from whatever the local, because within a country, another country can't be having shit happen in that country unless it's doing some subversive shit, right? Or
Mm.
it's like permitted. So like you have a country like India, you got the central authority, and whatever they do is all that happens in India in terms of like progress and investment and development and stuff. And outside of that, where that's focused,
I don't know. I
things
mean,
just
I,
sort of
I
stay the
know a
same.
lot of I know a lot of Indian billionaires
Yeah.
who are reinvesting back into their country.
Oh, I've no
Um,
doubt, no doubt.
my friend Ramund Singh from Gujarat, um, worth nearly 24 billion rupees. Not not not
So,
it's not
hmm.
not in pounds or dollars or anything. It is rupees.
Well, let's
Um,
let's let's check that. Let's check
I
that.
think he's at least got 100 grand or something. Um,
24.
remember, I think it's 9 zeros for a billion.
Uh-huh. Oh, it's like a
Or
wait.
is it eight?
Well, it's basically a wait. What is the actual rate? Because it looked like it was just 24 million. Yeah, £1 is like 100 rupees, so it's just 24 million.
Oh, well, he's still pretty rich then.
He's a solid millionaire.
He's a multi-millionaire.
Yeah.
He's not a multi-millionaire because I think you have to
No.
be above 103 million to be a multi-millionaire. But
Well,
um,
coincidentally, the exchange rate is actually a pound to 103 rupees. So
well, I have codes in all my words. Um,
you have
so
codes.
well, little references, little Easter eggs,
Uh-huh.
little what
Oh,
do they call those little
it's not
Nazi things?
103, it's 102.56.
Dog whistles. Is it a dog whistle?
Dog whistle, yeah, right-wing dog whistle.
Yeah, because dogs can hear like way like greater range of frequencies
Yeah.
than humans can.
Luckily for us, right-wing dog whistles on this podcast is actually good because, you know, our sponsor is a monarch from Saudi
Yeah,
Arabia, so that's actually politically correct what we're doing.
yeah. I mean, we want to get that
I don't think any
money.
people in Saudi Arabia actually listen to this podcast, not even our sponsor, because he has more important things to do, let's be honest. But I think it's
I
just like
don't know.
one of his accountants, you know, he probably was just like, I'm gonna funnel some money into this. And he was
No, I
like, yeah,
think
whatever.
no. He sent didn't he send us a message?
He sent us a message, but is it really him sending it, or is it his personal bot assistant?
Well, I don't know. It depends. Is it handwritten or is it
It
just text
looked
like
like it was
typed out?
handwritten, but you know, it's like AI these days. They could probably generate that, you know, because it was an image. It wasn't like
Someone
on a piece
else's
of
hand
paper.
as well. That's the other problem.
Yeah, I don't
And
think he
was it
can
in
write like
Arabic?
that.
Because that's the other problem.
It looked like well, it was in English,
Can't write in Arabic.
because I can't read Arabic.
He's kind of a shit prince of Saudi Arabia if he can't even like write Arabic,
No, he can,
you
I'm
know?
sure, but he. Well, I don't think
Yeah.
he wrote it.
Well,
I'm
good.
still going with the bot theory, but I would say it was English because I could read it, but it was like written in a weird way where it looked kind of
Loves
Arabic.
loves the podcasts.
He said we're doing important work and that soon our efforts will be, you know, show the fruits of their labor when the time comes and the order of the world is shaken and we'll have a favorable place in the new world order. So I'm looking forward to that. But you know, maybe he'll just betray us. I don't really know. It's hard to tell when you can't even tell if the written hand is really his. How can you tell what the contents of his words truly are?
Well, and especially the fact that they are in Arabic as well.
I told you it's not in
And
Arabic. The letter
I can only
wasn't in
speak Arabic.
Arabic because I can't
I
read
can only
Arabic.
speak
So if I
Arabic.
read it, it must
I
not be
can't read it.
Arabic. You can wait.
Well, you say that. I mean, maybe it was like coded Arabic, so like subliminal Arabic, so it looks like Arabic, but when you read
Subliminal
it, you
Arabic.
actually get. No, but I mean, like, well, actually, technically, the English would be the subliminal part. It looks like Arabic, but when you read it as an English speaker and someone who doesn't understand Arabic, you would still get the English translation in your head.
I mean, I guess that's what I'm talking about because it looked like an Arabic sort of style of writing, but it was English. Like the words were
Was
English.
it right to left or left to right? That's the important question because
It
Arabic is
was
right to left.
it was bottom up, but then it did like a loop in the middle, and then it went to the right.
Oh, so it's like southwest to sort of east or something.
Like a Mobius strip.
It's like a Mobius strip.
But it was
Wow.
cut off at the edge. You don't see the
Wow.
whole loop, you know. But it does turn
Oh,
around, sort of.
no. Well, is it actually a Mobius strip or is it
It
two
look.
different bits of paper?
I
I mean,
can't
that's the
tell.
question.
I can't tell. But I think it was a Mobius strip.
Hmm. Yeah, Mobius strips. That's one of those really quite interesting bits of like geometry and stuff. Because
Mm.
there's no like real limit to how many turns you could have in a Mobius strip. I don't think. Potentially, you know,
Hmm.
it could be very, very rippled.
Maybe the s- the space time like shape of time is a Mobius strip. You know, like what if space
That's
time is
what
a
I'm gonna
Mobius
say.
strip? You know.
I mean, what if time is like a loop? Like not even like the Big Bang and like the heat death and then it all restarts. I'm talking like literally, like you just get to a certain point, or not even a certain point. It just always wraps around again. You know,
Yeah.
like in 2 trillion years, you know. it'll be 2 trillion years in the future, but it'll also be like 9 billion years ago or some shit, you know?
Mm.
I mean, those timings are way off, obviously, or whatever. But like, who are we
I think the
to
universe is
say?
like 13 billion years old or something.
Yeah. I realized after I said the 2 trillion statistic that I'd have to sort of like you have to sort of rein it in a bit with the 9 billion. Is 13 billion is nowhere near like a trillion even. So yeah, not the best analogy, but it's an interesting way to like if for a universe to be. I mean, conceivably, like there's no reason why a universe like that couldn't exist if the laws of physics
But
were different
I think
in some
time can definitely function as a loop because I think about like game design. In games,
way.
you have a loop that you create where a certain set of processes is made, and that basically happened. That is like one tick in the game, right? That is one
Mm,
series of events that allows the state of the game to change and for everything to update by one
mm,
uh, go. And that is a self-contained loop, right? That is the sort of smallest unit of time that you can count in. And so
mm.
time can work like that, where what time is isn't defined by the events that happen in it. What time is the loop within which events occur indefinitely.
Yeah, and possibly the same events keep happening over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Or possibly because of like quantum randomness, and if that is a real sort of thing, like if we can never find
Hmm.
that, or if we find out that it truly is random, right?
Yeah.
Maybe each sort of go over something changes just slightly,
Hmm.
just slightly, like a few atoms, a few molecules change, and
Well,
over
because
over
you can imagine.
billions of cycles, like you start seeing sort of wider
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
changes.
Yeah. Like all these cycles are smaller parts of a bigger cycle, and it's like all there's like different scales to it.
Yeah, and
Loops
then
within
that
loops.
big cycle repeats in in an even bigger cycle,
Yeah.
and then it's even a bigger cycle,
And then
and
you have
then a
these,
bigger cycle,
and then
and
you
then
have,
and then a, and then a bigger
but then you
cycle.
have the parallel cycles where there's cyclical alignments as well, where they have different rates and then they align at certain points mathematically. And
What both of them like sort of join together.
well, they
Maybe
have
it's like
like
maybe
different
it's like a
rates, but
double
at some
helix.
point they are at the same, stage at the same time.
Maybe it's like a double helix. You know,
A
like
double
they're
helix.
constantly wrapping around each other, but there's
Yeah.
also
Yeah, they're doing
like
gymnastics.
bridges between them as well. Like
Yeah.
DNA. It's got those little strands or
Yeah.
whatever, little middle bits between the loops.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe that's like wormholes or some shit.
Well, the middle bits in the DNA are the actual chromosomes, I think.
Mm,
Like you've got the two ribbons that spin around each other, like some orbit of planets or whatever, going through space, and then the thing that connecting them are the like the two sides of each chromosome that are sort of locking in. Like you have like these patterns of like things like AB or BA or whatever, and then they lock in from either side to create like a stick.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could definitely like make a cult out of this. Actually, I really do.
Yeah, like the Jonestown thing.
I realized that my plan to create a Papua New Guinean stronghold not only is flawed because
It's
Papua New
gonna need a
Guinea is
lot of
rife with,
slaves, right? It's gonna need a
well,
lot
it's
of.
rife with volcanoes as well, Papua New Guinea, which
Yeah, I mean
and they're
it's
active as
rife
well.
with a lot of things, isn't it? It's.
Well, yeah, but beyond that, I realized how similar it did sound to a cult,
Hmm.
like leaving to some remote jungle town or jungle place, which is exactly what Jonestown did. They went to like Guyana and like created
Hmm.
like a compound. Um, they basically like cut themselves off from all like the outside world's information. Um, it was fucking mental. And then eventually, like they did this mass suicide slash murder. Like some people took poison willingly. Some people got like forced to do it or whatever. But it was just this whole big thing where like 990 people died or some number around there. It was between 900 and 1,000. I know that. Um, it's insane. And the thing is, the interesting thing, what the point I was trying to get to is that you never really know when you're in a cult, you know?
Mhm.
Like you can sort of maybe you take acid one day and you piece it all together and you realize, oh shit, I'm in a cult, you know?
Yeah.
But if you like beyond like a moment like that, an epiphany moment, a moment of realization of your current surroundings and your current scenario, um, the current narrative you're engaged in, you, things like that just happen so naturally. Like the whole Jonestown thing took, literally like years and years and years and years and years to sort of slowly unfurl. People would just like become part of this community and they get their friends and their family into it. It's like slowly because, it's when they're like when a friend is down or something or a family member's down, they're like, oh, why don't you come join me and we can go to church and listen to this guy and,
Mhm.
and eventually, and it doesn't seem, the thing is they were pretty calm about it as well, at least they seemed to be pretty calm, and then it slowly evolves. They eventually they went to Guyana and they had no information coming from anywhere apart from Jim Jones himself, who basically like told them the world was ending everywhere outside of the compound that they were currently in, um
Classic.
to make, yeah, so that they didn't want to leave and shit. It's fucking insane. But a lot of them were happy. A lot of them sort of faked being happy, and he even had his own secret service, right?
Oh, well, you got
He
to,
had his
don't
own,
you?
yeah, he had his own secret service to root out like dissenters and like 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 it's mental, like the whole story. And the thing is, I do think it does sort of naturally develop. Even like the person making the cult
Yeah, I mean, the whole
doesn't
Jonestown
necessarily
thing is
know.
like it's a microcosm of, a sort of power dynamic that develops around an ideology and its figurehead, you know.
Yeah, since well,
Mini Soviet
it's
Union.
just insane, isn't it? Like because even the cult leader probably doesn't. Well, sometimes they probably do, but often I bet it's sort of very gradual for them as well, and it's this slow build up, and a lot
Yeah.
of the time it isn't that deliberate, you know. And maybe he thought, fuck the West or whatever, because he lived in San Francisco or some shit beforehand. Maybe he did think it was falling apart, and he was like, look, the only way I can save like the species and all our like advancements and society and the people who rely on me as well, the people who go to my like gatherings and my talks and stuff. Um, the only way to save these people is to go somewhere remote where we're not going to get fucked over by the government and build a new society from the ground up. But you hear about it, and they work like 18 hours a day, um, and like they always heard his voice playing through the compound.
Oh,
He would give like sermons or news or it's fucking mental. And so I realized that maybe starting just for PR reasons alone, maybe starting a Papua New Guinean compound for friends and family, um, isn't a very good idea.
yeah. Well,
Um,
there's like, I got this thought where you were talking. Like, I watched like this channel on YouTube where this guy makes like these little basic simulations of like sort of evolution and it, well, not really evolution, but like an ecosystem where you have
oh, I
like,
think I know the one you were talking about. And they're like little blob things.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And it made me think of that, how like, certain ones you have like a certain combination and a certain setting with different certain values, and you run the simulation and it settles at a certain point, a certain percentage of this type and that type, and it just sort of levels off there and it stays at that. And then other times it, sort of just goes off and, one of the species or both species just die out. And it's sort of like that, like you have this certain preset of like initial conditions and like the people that are involved, where it all starts, and then you run the simulation, and it just goes off the edge of the graph. You know, it just accelerates into infinity,
Mm.
where it just ends with mass suicide. It just accelerates and
Yeah,
goes off the rails like
I
that.
remember watching his video about, it was like not kindness, what's the word? Like
Altruism.
altruism, yeah, like
Yeah,
how
I've been following
altruism
him.
develops as a concept, and like what the percentages of people that you need to like adhere to it for it to actually like
Yeah. Well,
stay.
you remember like the crucial point is that altruists need to be able to detect other altruists and help them,
Mm.
but not help the ones who are selfish, because that won't let altruists survive.
It's kind of like Karl Popper's paradox of tolerance, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, like if you tolerate the intolerant, then the intolerant will destroy the tolerant, and then won't have any tolerance at all. It'll
Yeah.
just be intolerance.
Or like it's also like the
Um,
tragedy of the commons. It's like if everyone has to ha- allow the common thing to be sustained, otherwise there will be no common thing. So if there's people who are just selfish about it, then it can't exist.
but the thing that I find interesting is that there is also an equilibrium where a certain amount of those people can exist
Yeah.
and will have better lives because of it. This is what the psychopath thing is, like they're the ones who have no altruism in them.
Oh yeah, the ones
And
who
because
pretend to
there's
be
only
altruistic but aren't. Like
yeah,
they convince
um,
the altruist that.
yeah, exactly. They manipulate people.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are a certain amount of people who can do that and thrive. It's just when you get to a certain percentage of the overall population of people who are exclusively um, looking out for themselves, well, no one trusts anyone, and then you have to be a psychopath, basically, you know, because
Yeah.
if say even 10% of people were psychopaths, you know, um, which is quite high compared to the current number, but it's only 10% of the population. I think that would completely break down trust within the other 90% as well. Because if 1 in 10 people, that's not that many people, you know, people that you meet is a complete psychopath. How many of the rest of those people would you trust? Especially because there's no outside, like, there's no, like, external physicality that you can see or hear or whatever that gives them away as a psychopath, you know?
Hmm. Yeah, it is a weird one. I think I think like the actual evolution of human psychology, because you know animal psychology is a lot more predictable, and so we found it pretty easy to sort of describe in the similar sort of terms as we do just sort of the physical qualities of animals and how they have evolved and what purpose they have in their evolution, right? And I think as we get closer to developing AI and understanding how our brains work and all this stuff, we'll get more and more aware of that element of like how our psychology has evolved into these various niches that all have some sort of role in the equilibrium of mankind.
Do you think there are like a sort of a certain set number of like archetypes or sort of
Nah,
like
well,
characters almost?
like it's the same as with everything else, where the categories are just made by us for the
Mm,
reasons that we need, you know, to be, the things that we need to categorize shit for. We make categories for, and so we can make archetypes. We've made plenty. There's personality profiles, like the personality types with the letters and star signs and everything else, political compass. All these things are ways of categorizing ourselves and putting ourselves into boxes that we can interact with each other based on in some sort of pseudo predictable fashion. But it's all,
mm.
just obfuscating the details in order to simplify things into, you know, blockier shades that we can actually distinguish between.
Yeah, I guess I guess you're right. I mean, there's always going to be no one's ever going to fit into a mold perfectly, you know? It's only really when you sort of look at the vast majority of well, yeah, it's only when you look at their actions on a large scale in terms of like the totality of what they lead to over a course of a fairly long period of time, you know,
Hmm.
where you can really tell, I guess.
Yeah, being able to really tell though, like it's gonna take a while.
Mm,
I might not even ever get there.
yeah, I'm baked right now. I forgot what we were talking about. What were we? What were we saying?
We're talking
What are we
about
not telling or telling
human
or?
evolution of human psychology and like.
Oh yeah. What I was gonna say was like ADHD, for example.
Oh, nice.
There's a reason why ADHD exists, and it's not a disorder or a disease or anything. The reason it exists, like, or what I've heard people say at least,
Oh
I'm
yeah,
not
I
a
remember
scientist.
when you told me this. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like
Yeah,
they like
is
hyper aware of like hypersensitive or something.
yeah, exactly. Like if you have a bunch of people, so you got like a tribe of 30 people,
Yeah,
if just one of them or like two of them or whatever is ADHD, that might save a lot more of them because say like you hear a twig break in the night or you hear some sound and maybe it's just the wind rustling some bushes or maybe it's just like I don't know, something breaking a twig or whatever, like a bunny or some shit. It's nothing
yeah,
like dangerous. It could be a tiger or it could be like something that's actually going to kill you or one of your family or your tribe or whatever. So having a certain amount of people in your group who are like hyper aware and hyper responsive to potential threats in terms of at least like checking them out to see if they are real is a big evolutionary benefit, not just to that person who won't put their own safety in risk as often, but also to the tribe who they want to protect as well,
yeah.
you know? So it makes sense for us, like, I don't know how it would be determined on a species-wide level who is to be ADHD. I'm not sure if it's just genetic or if it's like if it would be like a specific trigger or like environmentally while you're being brought up that says, okay, this guy should be ADHD or whatever. Or maybe it's I don't know. I'm not an expert, but I do find it interesting that there's an evolutionary reason for that thing to be there. So how can you say the same for other personality traits is what I'm saying, you know?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting actually because you hear of this thing like, there's genetic reasons why you end up being like on one side of the political spectrum or the other. You can
Mm,
be a right wing, a left wing, liberal, or conservative. And it makes me think like, well, in a sense, well, for one thing, that's always going to be true by necessity, I guess, because there's always going to be a spectrum, right? Like, how big it is just sort of relative, right? It's relative to how much there is to be different. And so
mm,
there's always going to be a political spectrum and a way to divide. There's always going to be a left and right. It can be shrunk down or embiggened, right? It can be more diverse or less
big,
diverse, but there's always going to be two sides,
yeah,
and the space in between. And so it's sort of like you realize, like, well, then all of these attempts of humanities to sort of eliminate the dichotomy and unify things, find the one thing that we can all agree on is just sort of redundant.
mm,
Like that, a thing can take you so far in a certain situation, but then you get to a new equilibrium where there'll be a new divide because there's nothing else to divide over, and so people will stray to whatever thing they're adjusted for.
mm. Well, there's this Indian philosopher, well, not philosopher, like guru called Sadhguru, Sadh.
Mhm.
Um, and I think it's him anyway. He puts forward the idea of like not to. Um, it's it's the idea of everything is as unity, but it's always it always seems to have perception as two things.
Uh-huh.
But it's always the case that those two things that are seemingly opposites can only exist with the other existing, and so they are
Oh yeah,
always part of the
it's
greater one.
it's a fundamental thing, you know.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
yin and yang,
Obviously,
or
yeah, he's not the first person to come up with that idea, but I think
yeah,
that was quite a good way of putting it, and the
or
name
like
sort of struck me as well. Like the idea of not to, that's quite a good way to think about it,
is it?
Like you're referencing the fact that that duality appears, but while also understanding the fact that in some ways seeing the world as those dichotomies is flawed, you know?
I guess it's like when you have that dichotomy to identify, one way that you can refer to it is by saying that it is a one thing and what that one thing is not.
Mm. Yeah, I don't know. It's an odd one, isn't it? I mean, I don't, but what you're saying about like the political compass or spectrum being like genetic almost,
Hmm.
um I find that really interesting. Do do have they isolated like a particular gene or part of the DNA, do you know, or is it because it
No,
could it be the fact that it's like your parents, you know, influence your beliefs and you influence your kids' beliefs just because you're raised under those people and you raise your kids,
I think it's silly to go, you know, even propose things like, oh, it's just because of this, because obviously it's everything, right?
Well, yeah, yeah.
Um, and again, like I don't think you can isolate. They've isolated any genes because when it comes, what you got to think about is like
You
the
found the
the
gene that makes one a libtard.
yeah, yeah, that's yeah. So it's like, look, the more basic a behavior is, basically, the less different things that your brain needs to do in order to arrive at that behavior, the closer it will be to the core specific genes. But the more complicated the behavior, the
Mm,
more built up it is, the more different genes are going to be contributing towards that outcome. And so once you get
mm,
to things like politics, which is basically talking about everything and trying to find a solution to everything, obviously it's going to be, well, it's going to be everything. It's going to be the genes that determine what your eye color is. You know, that's going to play some small part, even if it's a
I
quarter of
mean,
a percent.
the fact that after all this time, both sides of that political compass still exist, or I should say, all four sides, or
The whole circle.
both every every side of the two axes, right,
Yeah,
continues to exist and probably always has existed in some form for as long as humans have discussed these ideas. Um, which shows that in some way, like all of them probably are necessary in some ways, at least maybe only just to curtail the other ones,
yeah,
like there's very few people who are in on a compass, for example. If you imagine the political spectrum as that sort of square compass, which I've seen people say is not the best representation, but whatever. There's not that many people who are right in the corner of any of those four sides. Um,
well, I don't know about that. I'm sure you can find some people.
well, yeah, obviously you find some people. Um, I don't know. I just find it quite interesting. I think there is a purpose to and it would make sense if it was like I guess maybe kind of genetic or something to do with like a balancing act that both sides balance each other out and you need
Yeah.
that.
Well, I guess part of that is being revealed nowadays in a way because you've seen in American politics at least this
Mm,
phenomenon where it's being revealed just how much people identify themselves as opposing the other side. And
mm,
so sort of this case where the mask is dropped and you realize that everyone is the opposition to the other thing. I am this because you are that, you know?
Mm. Exactly, and at
Because when
that
you
point, you
stake a
just got to start
claim,
again.
right, when you identify yourself with a position, right, on the plane,
Yeah,
then suddenly you identify everyone else by, how much they are away from you, relatively. And so everyone
yeah.
else's relative position to you is then determined, and so, people start digging in.
Mm. I think you just gotta honestly, what people have to strive for is just to find what before they engage in, or well, I mean, you can't say before you engage because I mean it's just hammered into you from when you're so young, just politics, news, and shit. But disengage for a bit and then work out for yourself what you actually believe in terms of like a few concrete actual examples. I believe freedom of speech should extend to this limit. I believe, whatever religion should be tolerated to this limit. Whatever the issues are. You can just do three of them or some shit. Um, or maybe do all of them. I don't fucking know. And work out for yourself where you stand, and then where other people stand. I think will be a lot more obvious than if you and it'll be much better for everyone as well if you can just defend your own position because that's what you believe, as opposed to believing something because other people believe the opposite of that thing. Because then you're always going to be changing in what you believe as well, which means that what you believe isn't right, you know? Like if you always believe what the opposite someone else believes, then you're following into that narrative exactly as hard as that person, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, it sort of makes your beliefs defined by theirs as well.
Exactly, is what I'm saying. Yeah, which means that if they change, which they will, you have to change in response. So basically what I'm saying is as an individual, find like your own beliefs and don't necessarily stick to them, but don't like if you find evidence that makes you want to change them and that evidence is good evidence, then change them or like go or do definitely do that. But what I'm saying is don't define yourself by what other people are because that's not a great idea.
I think
Um,
it's easy to overestimate just how much control you have over what you actually believe,
mm,
because you can acknowledge something, but it takes more than just that for that to fundamentally change what's
w-
inside your head. It's like
yeah,
it's tricky stuff, because and how much that can happen, like brain plasticity that changes over time. That's just another quality of you that is affected by other things like age or what chemicals are in your brain right now or whatever.
mm,
I was thinking something else, but I think I might have lost it now.
yeah. Brain plasticity. Eh?
Hey,
I'll tell you what. Um, you're talking at the end there. You're talking about like it's another aspect of you.
yeah.
Um, what do you think like the you is? What do you think the I is, or what is that? What is the continuing unfurling story of which we are a part of?
Wait, you want to give me you want me to give you the basic answer?
Well, uh, yeah.
It's your consciousness.
Well, okay, but what? Right. Well, this leads to what I was saying was this. Well, I wasn't saying this, but I read this the other day that and I can't
Is
remember
this
if
the
it was
two
an
consciousnesses thing?
inspirational quote or if it was on a Reddit comment or
Okay.
I can't remember. But
Uh-huh.
the idea is that you are not like you as a thing are like a whirlpool in a way or like a tornado. You aren't any of like the matter that makes up the whirlpool, right? You aren't the water in the whirlpool. You are the self-sustaining shape that the water creates,
Hmm.
as opposed to the matter itself.
Yeah.
And I thought that's such an interesting analogy. I don't know that just kind of blew my mind for like
I think that
well,
sort
even
of
now it's kind of blowing my mind, to be honest.
I think that sort of
It's just
aligns
such a good
with
way of putting it.
what I've believed about
Um,
consciousness is that it shouldn't be treated as the thing that does stuff. It should be treated as the outcome of the things that are going on in your brain. You know, it's like there's a reaction happening, and then there's an outcome to that reaction. What goes in our brains generates consciousness, and consciousness is just the
that
outcome
just
of that happening.
that literally reminded me of what I was like the conversation we were talking about, wait, outcomes. Well, like political ideas. Sorry, just to go back to that.
Uh huh.
But do you think that do you think what you believe is literally just what you're exposed to first?
Well, it's not as simple as that, but I'm sure it.
Well, not first, but as in you see something and then you believe that based on the evidence there at the time,
Yeah,
then that itself might change, but it's never like you like go and believe something.
yeah,
That belief happens to you
yeah,
based on what you see.
yeah.
Most of the time,
And it's also can vary,
well,
like, it's
not
not.
random, but
We don't need to like simplify and be like, it's just like what your environment is or whatever. Like, it can be also like, how much you end up thinking about it, right? And how much, because there's a degree to which you can, and these are the sort of things that you said you can like encourage, people to do in order to be a bit smarter about it, is like really think about what you believe. There's an amount of processing that you can do that sort of
mm,
refines what's in your head and throws out the stuff that is unnecessary or doesn't jive with the rest.
guff. Yeah,
Yeah, the 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 the, the deadwood,
yeah.
and then you sort of refine the idea so that you really, really, really know what it is. Instead of just letting it sort of fester in the background without really understanding what role it's playing in your head and sort of guiding your beliefs and your decisions.
Mm.
Because you can sort of just go ahead and go on with your life, and you will develop ideas, and if you don't think about those ideas, then you don't really know what they are, but they still are your ideas, and you act by them.
Mm.
So that's sort of what the role of introspection and really thinking about what you are and what you have thought, seeing if that's internally
Yeah.
consistent. Because if you don't check yourself, then there's just errors are gonna pile up that are gonna be left unchecked. Neurons that are doing something that's completely nonsensical, and it's just stuck in a dumb loop.
The thing is, there's also the part of me that likes the fact that there aren't there. Well, there's part of me that likes the fact that there are people who aren't like that at all, um, and who've never actually spent like a second actually examining like what they believe. I like the
Yeah,
fact that those people haven't exist or no do exist. I like the fact that they exist.
yeah,
Um, Not necessarily as a like good thing for humanity as a whole. Just like I just think it is quite good that they exist. Just because it's an experience that is happening and will always be happening on this planet.
mhm,
Or at least always be happening while the human race is here. You know, like
yeah,
it is odd that you can have two people from the same family even who can have so wildly different like sort of ideas about the world and like views and
Oh, well, you got
not
to
not
consider
that
that,
so
that
much.
there is a sort of baked in function that always exists in sort of offspring, where they bounce
Mm.
themselves off of the
But,
parent, and go in the
well, that's
opposite
true.
direction.
I didn't mean that as much as like interests, like the focal point of your attention on a day-to-day basis can be very different. is sort of what I meant.
Mhm.
Um, like some people are completely sort of mathematically minded, you know,
Are they?
and then maybe, well, not, I don't think they literally think in equations or whatever unless they're doing maths, but like, you know what I mean? That's their focal point. They're like mathematicians or some shit,
Mhm.
physicists, whatever, you know. And then there's, you know, people who watch The Only Way is Essex. You know,
You came up with that title. I love that. The only way is that's.
that's a real thing. What are you talking about?
Well, I know it's a real thing. That's
Oh,
that's
right.
what. But like,
Oh, I thought you said. Oh, no, don't worry about it.
shit
Yeah,
is
no,
that?
fuck that show. Honestly, I mean, I've never watched it. Maybe it's actually God's gift to the earth, but some part of me actually quite highly doubts
If
it.
it's
Just
God's
like
gift, then we should
that
pawn
same
it.
part of me. Yeah, that same part of me also doubted it when Love Island was a big thing,
Hmm.
or X
Was.
Factor, or I don't know about is or was. You know, for all I know, it could have ended by now. It could, or it could be in its
Hmm.
highest season ever. You know, it's not the sort of thing I pay attention to. But yeah, that's what I mean. And the thing is, those two people could be siblings: the physicist and the uh, the Love Island watcher. You know.
Yeah, well, they're basically the same person. You know, their brains are getting engaged at the same levels. You know, it's just towards different ends.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. But it's just very interesting that despite the fact that we're an animal designed to survive the plains or the savannah of Africa and shit, like we have these varying sort of interests that seem determined from a young age almost, you know?
Yeah, quite often.
Um, like you can tell if someone's gonna sort of be into engineering-y type things, or is gonna be into sporty type things, or is gonna be into like acting-y type things, or is gonna be into like I don't know, making music maybe. I don't know. There's there's obviously like a, a massive like gradient of the potential of human experiences. Um, and all that is somehow generated from this sort of, you know, hairless ape or whatever. I know
Mm.
that's a very sort of cliche phrase at the moment. Like we just call ourselves fucking like hairless apes, hairless monkeys, or whatever. You know,
I
try
think
and
naked
diminish
is better.
ourselves. Yeah, well, what I mean is like the idea of like diminishing ourselves in that way is
Yeah.
fairly like a common trope nowadays. But I mean it only in the way that it's interesting from an evolutionary perspective that we can have so many different like focal points of our conscious attention,
Yeah.
you know?
I think mushrooms are to blame. I think stoned ape is my favorite cliche.
I actually do kind of believe the stone date theory. I cannot lie. No evidence. And you know, some people say it's not even a theory, it's not even a hypothesis. It's like I think it's literally Dennis McKenna,
I
Terence
think it's
McKenna's
just a
brother.
stoner thought.
Yeah, literally his brother, Terence McKenna's brother, Dennis said like it's not even a hypothesis, it's the stoned ape idea, you know?
Yeah.
Like people act like it's some sort of scientific
Yeah.
yeah,
Joe
whatever.
Rogan does anyway.
Yeah, but I can't lie, like when you just think about it on a logical level, it's just well, not a logical level necessarily, like,
On an
but
emotional level, it makes so much sense.
oh yeah, exactly. You know, it just makes sense, and often we
It
gotta like be
feels
aware
right.
for that. But there's a reason why we are so different from the other animals, and I don't think it's just the brain size, like being proportionally bigger. I don't think it's necessarily just the language that we have. It's not necessarily just because we're bipedal, just because we have the best opposable thumbs. You know, I think part of it might be mushrooms creating novelty, um, or at least having, you know, a massive impact on the generation of novelty or the
Yeah.
discovery of novelty.
Well, and here's the thing,
Um,
why, and I actually wanted to talk about this earlier in regards to like politics and stuff. It's like the more frequently you can sort of induce a revolution in yourself, the better.
mm,
Because as you let sort of things settle, they get stuck in, and then it's harder to sort of change and therefore adapt. In sort
mm,
of an immediate sense. And so it sort of maybe there was something, and maybe it was mushrooms or whatever else. But it allowed an acceleration of this sort of these revolutions that go on in your head to reassess your situation, to adapt, to adjust, and to modify yourself, intentionally,
mm.
and sort of, yeah,
Yeah. I mean, people forget that most literally like civilization in terms of like establishing an area where you call home and not just moving around and
yeah,
using the land as like seasonally or whatever. Um, like establishing yourself in a fixed place, and then all the technological advancement that's come out of that has happened within 12,000 years, right?
mhm,
If you take the far off explanations and the less far off explanations and put a sort of a nice educated average there,
uh-huh,
I'd say around 12,000 years is probably like a good cutoff point.
okay,
Um, for you know a million years, we didn't like we've been split from chimps for 4 to 7 million years, I think. Um, and we slowly sort of became human, and not much happened for a lot of that time. And then we invented like stone tools, and we used the same exact stone tools for like a million years. And then we discovered like a slightly better version of stone tool, and we did that exact same thing for like a million years. And then we had fire, and then we had fire for like I don't know, hundreds of thousands of years. But it not not many new things like
yeah.
happened. It took vast periods of time for new inventions, and obviously we were getting smarter through that whole time. So you would expect like the amount of inventions to sort of go up
The thing is,
in
I
shorter
wonder
periods of
how
time.
much smarter you do actually get on average over that
Well,
period.
well, that's the thing as well, isn't it? Like on a generational level, it's probably nothing
Because think,
really.
if you imagine it, like probably humans probably did get smarter in that million-year long period between getting the first stone tools and the better ones
Yeah,
that have happened in the last 2,000 years.
yeah. But even then,
Yeah.
like it no new ideas came along for that entire million years. And these are beings, animals that are between us and chimps. And chimps are already like fairly smart. There's some evidence that they use like really basic stone tools for like opening nuts and sort of other fairly simple like processes. So these these middlemen were basically they were using tools probably.
Mhm.
But until 12,000 years ago, out of 4 million years more, probably, um, we is that's the only time where this giant sort of surge has come. The only, I guess, we could say that around like 40,000 years ago, I think a lot of stuff started happening as well. And there is evidence that stuff happened before then. I think that we found like rings. I think someone found like a weird stone ring made out of like some weird stone, uh,
Yeah.
and uh, and that was like I don't know 70,000 years ago. But that we won't find many examples of that. But then around 40,000 years ago is when they think basically all the cave art in the world started becoming a thing.
Mm.
Um, like it, I don't know the exact sort of times, but the sort of beginning of and the beginnings, the end of the cave art era
Mm.
was fairly sort of like succinct, in terms of like the whole human timeline,
Oh.
you know. on a global basis as well, from what I've heard. Um,
So like it started and ended quite quickly.
yeah, and in a very similar range all across the planet as well,
Uh
where
huh.
humans were anyway.
Shit.
Um, which might suggest, maybe there were like some environmental changes at that time, and then maybe at that time there were loads more mushrooms or something, you know?
Yeah.
So everyone was just taking mushrooms throughout the world. Maybe that was the case. That was also the time when, you know, the best friends of humanity uh became our best friends and not
Mhm.
just not another competitor, aka wolves becoming dogs. Also around 30,000 years ago, maybe 40,000 years ago. Um, and
Mm.
like that's quite a novel idea as well, to be fair. Like the I like think about the first, because there was a first person who must have done that, or maybe it was like, I mean, maybe it was the wolves who initiated contact, but the humans had to, keep doing that,
Yeah.
for it to become a habit and to actually alter their genes to be like more suitable for what the humans wanted. So the humans definitely had a very direct impact on it, and that just kind of happened around the same time,
It is
you
crazy when
know?
you think about it, because it would have actually probably taken quite a long time until humans even realized you that these creatures will actually change
Mm,
and become easier to work with,
yeah,
and
that's a good
then
point.
like notice it and then realize, oh, you can also selectively breed. You know,
Mm. Well, I wonder if like maybe once we realized that we could selectively breed dogs, maybe that led to like
that
realizing we
was
can
definitely a
selectively
boom.
breed
Yeah.
plants,
Ooh.
is what I'm saying, like crops.
Ooh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. What I do know is they found a like a fossilized, or not, like a frozen sort of dead dog
Huh.
from like 25,000 years ago,
Mhm.
and it doesn't look like a wolf and it doesn't look like a dog. They
Yeah.
call it dogor,
Dog.
which
Dog
is
or.
short for dog or wolf. It literally is short for dog or wolf. They call it dogor,
Huh.
and scientists don't really know if it is a wolf or it is a dog. I mean, they know it's sort of like an intermediary stage, or something similar, but
Oh, I'm seeing that now.
it's
Yeah.
it's quite weird. Like it's got a very odd like face shape, Like it doesn't really look like a dog or a wolf. Wolves look quite a lot like sort of like dogs, You can tell that a golden retriever or a husky, especially, or even like a German shepherd,
Yeah.
is related to wolves. Just like you can tell that they're all related to like foxes because they have that sort of similar shape. But the doggo does look fairly unique.
Mm.
So I'm wondering if that was like a very early sort of experiment
That is like,
in
um,
selective breeding.
looking at these images, that is like the quintessential mongrel right
Well, they probably wouldn't. They probably would just. They probably wouldn't. I doubt they would selectively breed the same way we do nowadays. Like for obviously, like for you know dog shows and all this weird stuff, and
there. Mm.
extra fluffy and all this sort of shit. They and they didn't like separate them. You didn't have things like bulldogs, because why the hell, if you're a hunter-gatherer, would you make a bulldog? They basically can't breathe. Um,
Yeah. No, that would.
like so they probably did just sort all the dogs probably did just like interbreed with all the other dogs, and you wouldn't really have. Maybe you had loads of different breeds. I don't know. Maybe we only found that one breed, or maybe that breed that we found is like that because it's like a mongrel of so many other things. I don't know. I don't know. It's really interesting though. It's really interesting.
Mm.
I wonder if that 40,000 to 30,000 year gap, or not gap, that time is when something big happened to change, like environmentally, to change the human idea, or to enable humans to come up with ideas on a more rapid scale. Because although the civilization itself was only 12,000 years ago, like I feel like that sort of period was the sort of the build up for that, that 30,000 to 40,000, that's like the build up for the 12,000 years ago,
Yeah.
you know? I don't know. Maybe I'm chatting complete was. I don't know.
It's entirely possible.
It is. In fact, I'm saying it's probably it's probable.
Mm.
Um,
is something I thought of. I feel
Yeah.
like, and I re-examined this thought today, and I wasn't so sure about it, but regardless, I had this thought that visual artwork has, I think, a greater capacity to be chaotic and still, be beautiful as opposed to music. I
Mm.
feel like if you analyze music, in terms of like beats and stuff and the regularity of it mathematically, it tends to be way more regular and organized. And even doing a little bit makes it seem like really unconventional, and it starts to get really difficult, to get it right. As opposed to art, where you can do a lot of like just chaotic stuff that doesn't really jive that much, and it still looks, good.
Could I raise a counterpoint though?
Go on.
And this is possibly the most chaotic example that I'm about to mention of um like a art or music or just whatever in the world because it changes every time it's um heard, and it's this piece of music called 433, 4:33, which is also its time.
Mhm.
And the entire, if you look at it from sheet music, it's just rests. And the entire 4 minutes and 33 seconds is complete silence, but that silence is notated on musical paper.
Uh huh.
So every time it's listened to, the surroundings alter the song itself because it's silent. So the sounds of like the people in the audience, some guy coughing at the 2 minute 13 mark,
Uh huh.
some,
Okay.
like a fly's wings happening to like, buzz around the mic at that particular time.
All right.
Like
Well, how
they
beautiful
become
is that
part
though?
of it.
How?
Well, I'm not, I don't know. It's not necessarily beautiful, but it's definitely
Because
chaotic.
it's chaotic, but I also would say that that's not music.
That's fair. And a lot of people say that. And I have kind of said that because it's a bit of a cop out.
Because it,
It's more of a philosophical exercise, I
yeah.
guess, but it is interesting.
Because I mean,
I don't.
it's sort of like, it's like taking a canvas and saying it's a painting. It's like, well, it's a canvas, and maybe you can call it art, but it certainly isn't a painting because you haven't painted anything. Just like it's not music if you haven't played anything.
I guess you could say that, but you could also say, I mean, do birds have autonomous will? Well, birds don't have like free will, but they make music. You know what I mean? They don't.
Right.
Well, but that's what I mean. They don't make the music. The music's like embedded in their DNA in terms of like the songs
Yeah,
that
the
they
pattern.
sing to attract mates and stuff. The pattern of it, yeah. Um, and possibly even like the key, but I'm not sure. Um, so are they? Is that music in a way? Because you can't really say that they're going out of their way to make that music. It's a byproduct in the same way that like I don't know, you get a boner or
I
something,
think
you
it is.
know?
I think it is music. Um,
So, but what I'm saying
because
is,
even if
if
the
that
bird
is,
isn't like conscious of it, that's got nothing to do with it because it is actually singing.
but then
It's
it
about it
is
singing
there
that
not?
makes the music.
But is there not like if it's not doing it out of its own will, can you not say the same about a near silent room except the sort of that fly flapping, that guy coughing, the wind or the whatever, those minuscule little things, aren't they kind of the same? Because they're not consciously sort of decided like a human would make music.
Okay, here's my final point, right?
Okay.
If you wanna treat those elements in that empty song as music, then you also have to
Mm,
treat every other instance of it as music as well, which basically makes
mm.
every sound music. So if we are to have a distinguishable definition of music, then I don't think you can, under that definition, define that song, well, that empty recording with the random sounds in it as music.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Fair enough.
So,
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really have an actual opinion on whether it is or not. I just thought it's a good point. It does make you think though, like
yeah, yeah, it's
uh,
it's
what
a weird
what
one.
what makes something, you
Person
know.
who made that was definitely very cheeky.
I myself have thought of a little weird
Uh huh.
thing that we could maybe close on
All
because
right. All right.
we talked very briefly at the end of the podcast where the song was on about time travel and how last episode I mean about how if it was like in a self-contained loop it wouldn't break any of the laws of physics or whatever, you know?
Mhm.
It won't break Einstein because it always happened and it causes itself. You know,
Yeah.
what I was saying was you can test yourself if you are a time traveler, right? Or if you will be a time traveler in the future.
Right.
Um, you can test this yourself. Um,
Try and kill yourself, and if you're stopped, then you are.
no, 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 well, it's kind of similar. Basically, find somewhere that you know won't be radically changed anytime soon,
Uh huh.
right? So maybe dig a hole, right? And put like, well, I don't know where, but like you could the thing is you can decide where, and because it's going to be you in the future, that you will also know where.
Mhm.
But you have to make sure it's somewhere where the future you will definitely be able to access it and will also remember where it is. So it has to be somewhat significant to you. It can't just be a random location. Um, Basically, go to that place, dig that hole, and if the thing is there, then you will be a time traveler. Because the only way that could be there is if you in the future decided to put it there to show yourself.
Uh huh.
So that's what I want to leave the 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 listeners with.
All right,
If
listeners, go out to your garden and dig a hole.
it doesn't maybe don't do your garden because you don't know if your parents or you if you live there or if your parents live there, you don't know if they will still live there.
You're right. Actually, go to 10 Downing Street and dig a hole there. That'll also contribute to one of our other projects, but you'll
go
find out more
go to
about that
like
later.
go to a green space somewhere at night
Mhm.
that you think will be there for ages, somewhere natural that's not like an official green space,
Yeah.
like Hamlands, basically, is what I'm saying.
Don't give our ends
Like,
away.
go somewhere. I think you already have given it away, so I'm not giving anything new actually.
No, no. I mean,
But
it's not about the locations. I want to protect the sanctity of the Hamlands.
oh right, I see what you're saying. Well, all right, don't go Hamlands, but
Don't.
if you already live in the local area, maybe do go Hamlands. I don't know, but
Maybe. Sure.
um, if you're not a cunt, anyway,
Yeah.
go where you think you would put it, and where you can put it in the future, or at least should be able to, and check if it is there. But if it's not, that doesn't necessarily mean you aren't a time traveler, but because maybe something happened, maybe it did get moved, maybe some shit did
Or
happen.
maybe
I'm not
future
sure.
you just didn't bother or forgot.
Or maybe future you time traveled back in the time, but he still time traveled back to your future, i.e., he didn't go back before you to put it there so that you can check it now.
Yeah.
He might have come back 2 years after you're listening to this podcast and put it there, in which case you'd have to go after that day that you put it there
Yeah. So you have to
and
check it
then
every
check it.
week.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Um,
Piss
so
on it
yeah,
so that you can recognize your stench as well. It's good. Good strat.
make a little heart around there as well.
Yeah.
Like,
Don't make a hut. That gives it away. Come on.
no, make a little hobbit hole,
A little hobbit hole.
but with less of a mound.
Yeah. Mm.
Just like, just make like a little sort of,
Just make a round
just be a
door
mole
out of
man.
cardboard and
Just
just
be a
put it on
mole
the
man.
ground. Be a mole. Yeah, yeah,
Enjoy
yeah.
the mole man life.
Be a mole man. But how? If you're a mole man, how can you be a time traveler as well?
Well, maybe the secrets of time travel are locked within the depths of the earth. I mean, obviously the earth is hollow and inhabited
Yeah.
underneath the surface. So by, reptilian beings who have been around for, well, since the dinosaurs and
In a way,
much smarter than
like
us.
going
So,
through the middle of the earth might be time travel. You know, because weird gravity shit is going on there.
well, technically you are moving through time
Yeah.
while you dig. So,
Yeah. So you
yeah.
can like travel over to
There you
Australia
go.
and get there, and you're like in the future.
Remember another thing, if you are a time traveler, that just because you got to also be a space traveler, you can't just be a time traveler. Because even if you time traveled back like an hour ago, I think the Earth would be in a completely different position in space, and you would suffocate.
Oh,
And
that's very important.
it literally never would be in the same position again.
Yeah,
At least not for billions and billions and billions of years, because not only is the Earth moving around the sun, that orbit is changing, and also the sun is moving itself, and also the galaxy itself is moving,
and the
and
galaxy
the universe
cluster
itself
is
is
moving
expanding.
and it's expanding. Yeah.
Um, so
Well,
make sure
that's
if you
just
do
one of the
develop time travel,
many logical problems with time travel. It's like,
yeah.
how do you determine positioning?
Well, you'd have to do all the
You
equations, but
you'd need
yeah,
a grid for the universe. You know.
you'd need a computer to do
You
all the
probably
hard
would need a
stuff, I
computer.
think.
Yeah, I think if you're not using a computer, you're quite far from
Yeah,
the goal.
I think if you haven't discovered computers yet,
Mm.
you're probably not going to discover time travel either. But I mean, I might be wrong. Maybe there's aliens who have discovered like time travel, but have no clue what computer is.
Well, they probably don't know much about our computers.
Well, no, they probably can't do C++, but
Yeah, but then again, most people can't do C++ either.
no, I know I can't. Anyway, I'd say this is a good place
Do you have an ending
to
song? Do you want to play one of those
bookend.
ringtones?
Um, I don't have an ending song. We could we could um we could freestyle an ending song.
Freestyle.
Um, yeah, if we could like improvise one now if you want.
Alright, I'll give you a beat, yeah, and then you go
Okay,
off.
okay.
Meow, 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 meow. Meow, 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 meow. Meow, meow, meow. Wow, 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 wow.
Thank you for listening to the Ruminator and the Bullshit Artist podcast, and we will see you next time if the world does not end.
Or if we don't commit suicide with the rest of the late night cultists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if we do, we'll probably put something on our Instagram,
I
so
mean, it is episode 13 next time, so be prepared for something bad to happen.
it'll come out on Friday.